Oh my gosh, I'm remembering now one of the many reasons that I hated vlogging, which is that, on normal filming days, I prepare, I put on makeup, I make sure it's a hair washing day so that my hair is down and beautiful and straightened and all that. And vlogging, you just sort of like film when the moment arises, and like, this is how I look on a daily basis, like ponytail, hair slicked back, ugly. My face is flushed and shiny, but you know what? Hey, I'm trying to be authentic. I'm trying to be like, this is how I am normally, because it is. I'm also like cheating because I'm filming in my normal filming area because it's the quietest area of my house and it has the best background. So it is kind of lame because this is where I usually film. So I'm not very good at vlogging. Let us talk today about beat 1 of Save the Cat, which is the opening image. So as of right now, the day I am filming, it is April 5th. So we are several days into Camp NaNoWriMo already. And I have made pretty good progress with the first beat so far. So the plan for today's writing session, or this evening's writing session, is to try to wrap up the first beat. I think it'll be between 3,000 to 4,000 words long when it's finished, at least for this draft. But let's actually talk about what beat 1 is supposed to accomplish. So after I've read the chapter and kind of reflect on it and taken notes, read some of the beat sheets where the author goes through well-known books and movies and kind of goes through the beats and, explains how they work. My feeling about beat 1, the opening image, is that you're basically just supposed to introduce your character, show them in their world, in the status quo before they're kind of urged to change. So before they are forced to change, before the inciting incident happens. So you're basically showing your character in their natural element. You're trying to establish either what they feel like they need or what they actually need. The most common thing to do now, I feel like, is to show what the character thinks they need, so basically what they want, and then by the end of the story, you've actually revealed what they needed all along, and they learned this great lesson or whatever. So that's the typical way to go, I think. Another super important thing you're supposed to do with this opening image is establish the tone of the book. So, if it's supposed to be a hilarious contemporary romance, the first scene should be funny. If it's an action-packed, gritty thriller, the first scene should be that, So you're supposed to establish the overarching tone of the book so the reader kind of has an idea after reading that opening scene what they're getting into. So because I'm writing a Russian fairy tale retelling, I want the tone to be dark. And I know a lot of times in kind of the Western perspective, or at least the modern Western perspective, we think of fairy tales as very like frilly and light and whimsical. So think of like the Disney adaptations of like the, Western European fairy tales. They're very happy and pleasant and there's a happy ending, and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like Eastern European fairy tales have still kind of maintained that kind of dark tone. I don't think there have been super happy-go-lucky adaptations like Disney has done. I could be totally wrong because I don't watch a lot of Eastern European movies. Because of that, I want my book to also have that dark tone. There will be some whimsy, like there's still going to be a happy ending because I like happy endings, but overall it's going to feel like a very dark book. There's kind of this, overarching shadow over the story as the character's trying to figure out what's going on and the plot is proceeding. That is something I'm working on with this opening beat, is establishing kind of that dark tone, even within the context of just showing the character in her opening setting. So her opening setting isn't even supposed to be dark because it's just her village, she's out in the fields, so there really shouldn't be anything dark about that. So to accomplish kind of introducing the dark tone, I am referencing the kind of magical forest. So at the beginning of the story, the forest doesn't really have that connotation for the peasants. They don't think of it in that way. It doesn't have those legends around it. So what I'm doing is basically just introducing the idea that in the past couple weeks or so, Pelageya, my main character herself, has just been feeling this sort of unexplainable pull towards the forest. And it's not negative. It's not like this oppressive, like dark thing. She just for some inexplicable reason, just is constantly like looking over there, feeling like she's supposed to see something, but she's not sure what she's looking for. She just feels like she constantly does. So like there's something there that she's supposed to find, but she can't really explain it. So that's kind of the initial way I just try to introduce the dark tone of just like this foreboding and this mystery of like, why does Pelageya have this urge to look at the woods? Like, why does she think there's something there? So that's where I start off with the tone. So my opening scene, I start out with this kind of like, I try to be poetic with it, but I'm not actually good at descriptions. But I'm trying to do like this beautiful sort of poetic description of the fields they're working in, juxtaposed. I can't speak English. Juxtaposed against kind of these darker, shadowy sort of woods. Once again, the woods aren't supposed to be magical yet. Like the villagers don't think of them that way, but they are, you know, there's a contrast. Like these bright, beautiful fields that are just, you know, covered in sunlight out in the open, and then, you know, these older woods that have sort of a canopy, so that's dark inside, that sort of thing. So there's supposed to be that contrast kind of initially with the opening description. And then I introduce my character and kind of how she feels drawn to look at the woods. So that's just sort of her being introduced. She's in her thoughts, looking that way, and then somebody calls her name, and it's her friend who's come with the cart that picks up the peasants at the end of the day. Her friend Ruslana, who is heavily pregnant at this point with either her second or third child, I haven't decided, kind of totters over and wants to talk to her. So they're catching up as they're walking across the field to get back on the cart. Pelageya is 26 at this time. You know, we're in like, you know, think like 18th century Russia. There's a huge emphasis on getting married fairly early for women. You know, that's where a lot of your value is attached. You get married, you start a family. That's how things are. And so Pelageya is unmarried at 26. Her best friend, Ruslanka, like I said, is married, pregnant with one of her subsequent children, you know, all that sort of stuff. So you're just supposed to understand as the reader that Pelageya has been feeling this constant pressure from her family, from her friends, from her neighbor, and just from the way their society is set up and the expectations there are culturally to be married, and she doesn't have that yet. And so through the conversation with Ruslana, you're supposed to understand as the reader that Pelageya is kind of fed up with it, and she's just ready to come to terms with where she is, because she doesn't think she's actually going to find anyone at this point, you know, because a lot of people are already married. There was a war in recent years, so a lot of the young men from the village and in the surrounding villages went away to war and were actually killed. So, you know, you're in sort of a state where there's fewer young men for the young women that need to get married. And so there's just some young women aren't going to get married. And so that's Pelageya's mindset, and where her want is at the beginning of the story is just, you know what? I'm not going to get married. I'm ready to move on. I'm just going to stay at home and help my parents, continue to look after the fields, and I'm going to be okay with it. That's fine. Like, this is what I've been given in life, and I'm going to be grateful and move on. So that's the opening scene. And then she kind of gets put upon by Ruslanka with more of that kind of marriage pressure. Ruslana says, so I keep switching between Ruslana and Ruslanka because Ruslanka is just the nickname that I use in the book. But Ruslanka basically says that, oh, you know, my husband's cousins are coming into town to visit, and one of them is unmarried, and oh, you should come meet him. And Pelageya is just fed up with it. She's fed up with every conversation she has basically coming back to that and like, oh, you know, poor Pelageya. Oh, you know, we'll help you. We'll find someone for you. And so she kind of gets frustrated with her friend and decides she doesn't want to go on the cart home with everybody, and she needs to just, you know, have some time to herself and go on a walk. So the continuation, or the second part of the scene, is her walking to the woods to kind of look around. Once again, like I said, she feels kind of this pull. So she ends up at the edge of the woods, feels kind of weird, thinks she's going to turn around, and then something just minor happens that makes her think, no, actually, I will take a walk. So she walks around the woods, and that's where I'm at right now, is that she's kind of walking through the woods and lost in her thoughts. This became very rambly, but I'm just trying to explain my process and like how I'm trying to interpret the first beat in the context of my story. So I hope it's helpful, or at least it's interesting in some way or on some level. But that's where I'm at right now, like I said. So tonight I am going to try to wrap it up. Pelageya is going to find what later turns out to be the portal to the magical world. It's basically just these two trees that are leaned against each other, so they create kind of like a natural arch, you know, in the woods. And she stumbles upon it, and then she hears something behind her. Sorry, I need to look at the camera. She hears something behind her, and it's this old woman that's just wandering around the woods, has dementia, isn't making any sense, and Pelageya doesn't recognize her. So she decides to take her to the village. So that's where the scene will end. It's not bad. I think it's going in a good direction. I'm satisfied with what I've written so far. So the next time you see me in this video, it will probably be this evening as I give a final like update or wrap up for beat 1. And then we will close out this vlog slash video slash whatever the crap I'm doing. So stay tuned for that. Hey again, guys. I'm here to finally wrap up this vlog. Basically, this beat is one of those that like I feel like it doesn't have like a super obvious like specific ending point. So I'm just gonna end it where I'm at, and if like technically speaking it's not over, whatever, I don't care. But I think I have accomplished the goal of the opening image, which like I said is to introduce the main character in their element before the inciting incident, show the what's the word? Tone? I almost said theme, but like the tone of the story and kind of what the reader should expect as they proceed. So I am happy with what I've gotten. I've hit a couple roadblocks just like mentally and with my schedule. I'm kind of tired of how I've been writing. You know, I write at home just on my laptop in the room downstairs. And I write in the evening, and I think I'm just kind of like tired of that schedule. So I'm looking forward to this Saturday to going to the library and doing a session there and see if that kind of like jumpstarts my creativity again. And then I think another issue is, even though I'm supposed to be letting The Elf and the Goblin rest right now before I later on try to re-outline it and kind of expand it into a larger story, I can't get it off my mind. Like, I am so obsessed with that story, which is hilarious to me because literally it didn't exist as an idea until a few months ago because Amara approached me, or she approached our group to see if anyone wanted to write for the box. I literally came up with the idea for the book box, and now I'm like, oh, I'm obsessed. This is my new favorite thing. So I'm like, how the heck do I move on and work on a different story if all I can think about when I'm daydreaming, which is usually how I know what I'm supposed to be working on as far as writing, if all I can think about is The Elf and the Goblin, you know? Like, sometimes I daydream about the Russian one, but a lot of times I'm like, oh, Tajo and Ildrana. Anyways, those are the main character names. Anyways, I'm going to try to spend more time outlining and planning for the Russian fairy tale to try to force my mind into focusing on that. I also have a playlist on Spotify that's like kind of eerie, mellow, spooky, you know, minor key Russian folk music that is supposed to help get me in the mood for the Russian fairy tale. So I'm going to try to listen to that at least once a day just to kind of put me in that mindset. But yeah, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. I am so obsessed with The Elf and the Goblin. Oh my gosh. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this vlog. I hope it was helpful and interesting. The next one I think is the theme stated beat, which is like the shortest beat, I think, in Save the Cat. It's literally like part of a scene basically where a character that's usually not the main character says like what sort of growth the main character is going to go through, if that makes sense. So it's really short. So that vlog will be up next week, hopefully. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you guys are looking forward to the rest of the series, and then when I eventually do a wrap up and just kind of reflect on the process as a whole, which will be way down the line once I've finished this draft at least. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have an amazing week of Camp NaNoWriMo and that it's super productive. Anyways, happy writing. Bye!